Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. We're covering the next part from The Roots of the Problem, Origins, which is the interactive model of nature and nurture when it comes to creating psychopaths or other cluster B creatures. The position that Dr. Hare, from his book, Without Conscience, Robert D Hare PhD, The Disturbing World of the Psychopaths Among Us, his position he favors is that psychopathy comes from a complex and poorly understood interplay between biological and social forces. It's based on evidence that genetic factors contribute to the biological basis of brain function and to basic personality structure, which in turn can influence the way the individual responds to and interacts with the experiences of life and the social environment. In effect, the elements needed for the development of psychopathy, including a profound inability to experience empathy or the complete range of emotion, including fear, are provided in part by nature and possibly by some unknown biological influences on the developing fetus and neonate. As a result, the capacity for developing internal controls and conscience and for making emotional connections with others is greatly reduced. That doesn't mean that psychopaths are destined to develop along a fixed track, born to play a socially defiant, deviant role in life, but it does mean that their biological endowment, the raw material that environmental, social, and learning experiences fashion into a unique individual, provides a poor basis for socialization and conscience formation. To use a simple analogy, a potter is instrumental in molding pottery from clay, which would represent nurture, but the characteristics of the pottery also depend on the sort of clay available, which is nature. Although psychopathy is not primarily the result of poor parenting or adverse childhood experiences, according to Dr. Hare, he thinks that they play an important role in shaping what nature has provided. Social factors and parenting practices influence the way the disorder develops and is expressed in behavior. Thus, an individual with a mix of psychopathic personality traits who grows up in a stable family and has access to positive social and educational resources may become a con artist or white-collar criminal, or maybe a somewhat shady entrepreneur, politician, or professional. Another individual with much the same personality traits but comes from a deprived and disturbed background might become a drifter, mercenary, or a violent, horrifying criminal. In each case, social factors and parenting practices help to shape the behavioral expression of the disorder, but have less effect on the individual's inability to feel empathy or to develop a conscience. No amount of social conditioning will by itself generate capacity for caring about others or a powerful sense of right or wrong. To extend his earlier analogy, psychopathic clay is much less malleable than is the clay society's potters usually have to work with. One implication of this view for the criminal justice system is that the quality of family life has much less influence on the antisocial behaviors of psychopaths than it does on the behavior of most people. In many recent studies, they evaluated the effects of early family background on later criminality in psychopathic and other criminals. Their findings were that there's no evidence that the family backgrounds of psychopaths differed from those of other types of criminals. Not surprisingly, most criminals came from families marked by some sort of problem. Among the criminals who were not psychopaths, the quality of family background was strongly related to the age of onset and seriousness of early criminal activities. Thus, those from a troubled or disadvantaged family background first appeared in the adult court around the age of 15, whereas those from a relatively stable background first appeared in adult court at much later ages, like 24. In sharp contrast, the quality of family life had absolutely no effect on the emergence of criminality in psychopaths. Whether the family life was stable or unstable, psychopaths first appeared in adult court at an average of age 14. The findings for criminals who were not psychopaths are consistent with the general literature on criminality. That is, adverse family influences promote the early development of criminal activity. However, even a good family life that promotes healthy behavior in their siblings does little to deter psychopaths from their lives of callous self-gratification, and there is one important exception to these general conclusions. His research indicated that psychopaths from unstable backgrounds committed many more violent offenses than those that came from stable backgrounds. whereas background had little to do with the effect on the violence of other criminals. This is consistent with his earlier suggestion. Social experiences influence the behavioral expression of psychopathy. A deprived and disturbed background, where violent behavior is common, finds a willing pupil in the psychopath, for whom violence is not emotionally different from other types of behavior. Other people also learn violent behaviors, of course, but because of their greater ability to empathize with others and to inhibit certain impulses, they do not act out as readily as these psychopath creatures do. As far as my own views, based on my own experience, I must say I do mostly agree with Dr. Hare when he talks about the poorly understood interplay between biological factors and social forces. Because, face it, I've met several psychopath/cluster B type creatures over the years, but with none of them was I ever there during their upbringing, during their childhood. Sure, I might hear stories from them about such things, but doesn't necessarily mean it's completely accurate, and it may be slanted in one particular direction. Plus, he discusses the elements needed for the development of psychopathy, which includes the profound inability to experience empathy, or a complete range of emotions, which a few of the ones I've been involved with have shown that they're very good at hiding it, because they know it's not, quote, normal, unquote. So they'll go out of their way to appear to be normal, whatever that is, and they'll mimic others. And you have to spend a lot of time with them, ask them a lot of questions to finally uncover what the real story is, because a lot of times they will try to camouflage it. And he mentions the developing fetus, which I've read in a different psychology book from college days. If a mother, for example, has a child inside of her, and she's experiencing trauma, such as was the case with one of the creatures I was involved with, who I'm filling in some of the blanks here, but the guy who impregnated the lady was nowhere to be found, and she had some kind of fixation on him, and she was with child, probably thinking,
I'll show him my child, and he'll have to take me.
And of course he didn't take her. So the child was feeling all of these emotions she was feeling, such as anger and emptiness and loneliness, and all of that was transferred onto the child itself, which could also be one of the factors he's mentioning where he says unknown biological influences on the developing fetus, that can contribute. And as far as his comments, it doesn't mean that psychopaths are destined to develop on a fixed track, born to play a social deviant role in life. I tend to disagree if they've got all the psychopathic characteristics, because that type doesn't fix itself, it doesn't repair, unless he's referring to someone who's disposed to such things at a young age and then outgrows it. But he doesn't really make that clear in this section. And the part where he discusses the individual with a mixture of psychopathic personality traits, who grows up in a stable family and has access to positive social and educational resources, might become con artists or white-collar criminal and all that. Well, he mentions entrepreneur, politician, or professional. Well, honey, a lot of the politicians are psychopaths. And I'm wondering if he doesn't mean that a lot of these creatures end up disguising their psychopathy within a white-collar criminal job or a politician. Look at them. In fact, it seems in this day and age, in order to be a politician, you have to be corrupt. It's just a requirement, it seems. I mean, look at all the corruption we see, and none of it goes punished, or very little of it does. So these people have it made, these psychopaths in political roles. And he mentions a drifter. I happen to know one of those who, well, actually a few. The ones you meet that really like you and want to hang out with you, but you go to their home, and it's a little apartment that's completely empty, except for maybe a mattress or an air mattress on the floor. I've seen a few of those, and they didn't turn out so well. It's just, you look at their empty walls, their empty home, and just think this person looks empty. Or if it's a psychopathic creature, it seems like it's ready-made to find the first target it can that has a home, that it can just pick up its little air mattress and free belongings and truck right on over and say, let's move in together and be lovers. You have to be very careful with those types, because they really are wanting something you have in many cases, where they simply want your real estate because they have nothing, and they want to bring their nothing and blend in with your belonging and make it seem like they are a legitimate human being. But you have to wonder, if they're older than like 30 and they're like this, what's wrong? What's happened in their life? They should have accumulated something, not necessarily fancy, expensive things, but you think they would have gotten some hand-me-downs from parents or garage sale or something, but when their home is completely empty, that's a sign, for me at least, to look out. Now, there could be circumstances that caused this to happen. Like maybe they had all this stuff, but it was then stolen quickly, and then you met them, but that's usually not the case when I've been involved with these people. And I find the part interesting where he mentions that social factors and parenting practices help to shape the behavioral expression of the disorder, but have less effect on the individual's inability to feel empathy or to develop a conscience. No amount of social conditioning will by itself generate a capacity for caring about others or a powerful sense of right and wrong. Well, the creatures I've met like this abandon any cares for doing right versus wrong because, as we've covered elsewhere, to the creature, it's right if they get away with it, and it's wrong if they get caught. But you'll notice when they are caught, you don't see any real remorse. You usually get, oh, well, so what, I did this. So you think you're perfect. No, I think that what you did was rotten. You'll get a clue if you've been with someone who love-bombed you so perfectly and so wonderfully all this time, but then after extended periods of time, things like this start to peek out, such as the doing something horrific, and you're genuinely shocked by it and expressing your shock, and they pass it off like, oh, well, so what, who cares? What about the time you did whatever? That's a red flag to disappear. In the next video, we'll be covering the last part of this chapter, another look at the Camouflage Society.
I am the Narcopath of your dream. You know you want it.
I think it's time I give you a few more confessions. I got the place all to myself now. I'm just kicking back, relaxing. I figure it's time you learn.
I remember the first date.
I got a load of your house. I got a load of your car. I could see myself fitting nicely in your little abode. I threw on the charm and complimented you any time I could, any possible moment, even the way you washed your car. It didn't please me when I heard you say that you like to have what you called alone time. I can't stand alone time. I have to have action at all times, or I'm just not alive. That's just the way it is being the Narcopath. Of course, I wanted to make a good impression on you, so in typical mirroring fashion, I told you,
oh, that's okay. I like to have my alone time too.
But it's time I revealed to you what my alone time really was. Because you weren't progressing as fast as I wanted marriage after the first date. I had to keep my options open. So, when you said you wanted your alone time, I told you I was going to have my alone time, but my alone time was chasing after another boy, or two, or three. You didn't need to know any of this. After all, you hadn't given me what I wanted, which was a hand in marriage. So I figured I could say whatever I wanted to say. You kept seeing me, and there were several more nights that you were having alone time. And you eventually heard it through the grapevine. I wasn't as perfect as I pretended to be. Let me break it down for you, honey. Here's what was going on during those nights that I was supposedly having my alone time, when you just happened to come by a few times and find out that I wasn't there. Well, I'm here now to tell you what was going on. Since you wouldn't marry me after the first date, as I said, I had to keep my options open. I run kind of like a business. You see, my trick is I go on to all the sex sites, and I don't post my picture because my Virginia would be readily recognized. I can't have that much publicity. I just have a blank, generic image, and then I do the ones that tickle my fancy, and I send them a private photo of me and my teeth. Those nights that you wanted your alone time, and I said I was doing my alone time, I was up and down those ads, looking at all the different guys, and I was having dates with all of them. The typical way it would work would be I would schedule people every day of the week that you weren't around. Some of the storylines I thought you might be interested in. At least TJ, when he heard this, he suggested that I tell you all this, so thanks, TJ. He's not even here. I gain a lot of insight from all my experience with all the different people I target. I pick up quite a lot of storylines. For example, Mr. Monday, we'll call him, will go out on a date together. We'll want to get close and put his hands in places that are dirty, and I'll push them away and say,
Oh no, I'd love to have sex with you, but I'm trying this new thing where I don't have sex until I really get to know the person.
He, of course, think I'm being serious. He have no idea that the night before my thighs were spread open at the Shady Lady and I had 10 different guys in there. I don't even know who they were. I was playing a Christian. I think we should get to know each other a little bit more first. And he respected it. That was my aim for him. Then, Mr. Tuesday, because you were still busy, the moment he came over, my thighs were open and he was deep inside. And I was screaming, ow! Ow! Yeah!
And then on Wednesday, that guy, he tried to get close, and I pushed him away just a little bit.
I was playing a game with him. He was going to get me in the sack, and he knew it. I just had to make him work for it, and it worked. You can understand why I couldn't dare let Mr. Monday know about Mr. Tuesday, and Mr. Tuesday know about Mr. Wednesday, because I'd have too much explaining to do, and I quite frankly don't have time for it. I'm here to have fun for me. They need to mind their own business. There. I hope that clarifies a little bit more. You're the best around, but you're not allowed to win some real rules. And you be a security case, and don't get lost. And she wants her, and she wants you. We want everyone, and she wants her, and she wants you. Not one, no one, no one better. It's the flame. Let's pick up the bubble, but you just can't make it. Just a steady jar, and you feel pain. Activations in the ground, you'll go down the drain. And she wants her, and she wants you. We want everyone, and she wants her, and she wants you. Not one, no one, no one ever. It is the flame.